Redzone.Bet, the British home of American sports.
Hello and welcome to the SportsHeads. We're going to take a look at the Conference Championship games. We're also going to take a look at the rest of the season that's played out. First of all, we're going to have a look at some of the coaching changes this week. Let me introduce our guest for the day. Mike Carlson needs no introduction, been around everywhere. BBC pundit, you're off out to Minnesota to cover the Super Bowl as well for the BBC.
Should be great. Just love sitting down with El Chapo and OC and Jay Bell, and they do that show twice a week, and I just feel like privileged when we do the live games, in London or at the Super Bowl to be part of that. It's just so much fun.
And they do it so
really
well.
good too.
They do it so well as well.
Yeah,
we're so lucky to have that program every week.
Well, you said SportsHeads. I thought the show was called the Knuckleheads, so I wore this shirt. Yeah, it's close.
Mike Carlson, of course, and Sam Morgan from The Verge magazine, the regular. I'm Simon Millam from Lindy's Sports. But first of all, we're going to have a look at some of the news items this week. We've had 3 major coaching appointments. We've got Mike Grable going to the Tennessee Titans. We have Pat Shurmur going to the New York Giants. And your team, Sam, Arizona Cardinals, also has a coach from Carolina, defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Steve Wilks, we touched on it a couple of weeks ago. We thought he was certainly in the frame, and I thought it was a really good hire. I don't know what your thoughts on it are.
I'm quite happy with it, to be honest. I think for us, bringing in more experience in again, and then probably tighten up our defence a little bit more with the weapons that we do have in that area, I think will be quite good. I think if we had gone maybe the other way on the offensive side, I think there would have been a lot more sort of emphasis, obviously, on that part of the game. And I think that's probably where the bigger project is. Why don't we work on our strengths and bring in someone like Steve now, who will probably actually bring in maybe the right coaches around him as well, because the good thing about Steve Wilks, I think, is that he's liked around the league. I think some coaches probably have come away with an aura of maybe there's a smaller circle of people they can bring in, whereas I don't think he's annoyed too many people along the way.
It seems a player's coach, unlike us.
I think that's probably true. And he's only had 1 year as a coordinator, and he's only been a head coach. I think it was at Savannah State or something like that a long time ago. So this is going to be a big jump for him, and we've seen this happen a lot in the past few years. Someone moves in first year as a coordinator, but into a pretty good system. And the idea is he's going to bring some of that system with him, which will be an interesting fit because
they're going to have to adjust to a 4-3, aren't they?
Yeah, basically. Although he's been
Carolina.
less flexible in Carolina than they've been. Arizona is kind of flexes between the two. Offensively, it's really interesting because they don't have a quarterback per se, and so whatever you do offensively, what coordinator you're going to bring in kind of depends. You have to do it before you decide what quarterback you're going to bring in. How are they going to work together?
Yeah, I mean the defense, Carolina, they were seventh in total D, 11th in points allowed. I mean they were 3rd against the rush. So there was it's a good defense that they've got anyway in Arizona as well.
Considering how many people they lost, it's done very well. About half that defense from 2 years ago is gone, and a lot of really good. Calais Campbell being the most obvious example. And the thing I think they'll miss with Bruce Arians is, regardless of everything else that went on, and I like him as a coach. I think he's basically a good coach. They won. I think it was 4 out of 5 games they played in Seattle under Bruce Arians, which is insane. Nobody does that. You don't go into Seattle and win regularly, and especially when you're a team like the Cardinals that was never on paper the best team in that division.
But I mean, I'm a bit of a historical stats sort of fan. I mean, it's like Minnesota going to Philadelphia at the weekend. It's because they never win there. They very rarely win there. Systems, they seem to, regardless of coaching personnel that change, players that change, the systems sometimes remain the same, and sometimes teams don't win in certain stadiums. It's New England in Miami, for instance.
I think the Cardinals now, though, with him being there, I think there's talk of Mike McCoy coming in as offensive coach. Now that, for me, is a great appointment if that obviously comes through for us. It's bringing that smile back to us a little bit. I think if we can, get Larry involved again as well for that other season, have that experience there to work with someone like that. I'm not saying we're going to go on and be amazing next year, but I think we'll obviously start to, people like David Johnson returning back from injury. I think there's...
McCoy would be a great hire because it puts less pressure on a quarterback because he's not a kind of drop back, hit long kind of throw. He likes play action. He likes movement from the quarterback, and he loves involving backs in the offense. So he'd be a really good fit, I think.
And I think stability on that D is going to be very important. I mean, Wilkes' team didn't allow a 100-yard rusher in Carolina again this year.
Well, they had a couple of pretty good defensive tackles,
but it still helps.
And Luke Kuechly behind them.
Okay, Mike Vrabel, another one we spoke about. Right time, 42 years old, now taking over in Tennessee. That's another really interesting hire. Takes over a team that's won its first playoff game for 14 years. What do we make of Mike Vrabel?
Well, again, a guy who's only been 1 year as a coordinator and then hired out. And interestingly, Romeo Crennel, who he replaced as coordinator, is going to go back into they sort of bumped him upstairs into that role. I like Vrabel because he's smart. I think he's learned under good people, systems and things like that. He was, as a player, an adjustable player. Remember, he started out in Pittsburgh, where they just couldn't make him work as a defensive end, which is what they wanted him. And he came to New England, and he was hybrid end linebacker, did really well. So I like that. He's going to a great situation because the general manager is John Robinson, who he knows from his Patriots days. So that's good. He's got a really good nucleus of a team there. Tennessee's got a lot of talent. They just need to put it together offensively, and that's again the questions. Who's going to be the coordinator?
Marcus Mariota may not be shackled as much as he has been in the last.
That's what we would hope. That's you look at that.
But then you've got a whole new coaching dynamic there because yes, you've got your head coach in Vrabel, but you're losing Romeo Crennel, possibly moving upstairs.
And Dick LeBeau is left.
Terry Robisky, the special teams coach, could well be ousted as well. So there's a lot of positions to fill
I think Dick LeBeau's lost somewhat the ability to adjust, and because he's got a system that worked so well for so long. The Steelers were not a good team at adjusting at halftime, say, during the flow of a game. They were sort of in, and that works, in the NFL. But today's NFL becomes more and more difficult to do that. 80 years old is a pretty good run. I love Dick LeBeau.
It's not a bad run. It's not a bad
I loved him as a player, even not as a coach. But
got a couple of years.
It could be bad news for the Patriots too, because they haven't announced the assistants yet, and we all assume that both Patriot coordinators are taking the two head coaching jobs that are still out there. Brian Flores, who interviewed in Arizona, linebacker coach in New England, I wouldn't be surprised if he became defensive coordinator in Tennessee. It would be interesting if he were offered the New England post, which one he would choose.
I was going to come to actually to see how see what your thoughts on those coaching changes, because obviously it looks like two is certainly going, but the third one may be a.
I think that's a brand new project. A bit like the Titans, I think the Patriots probably touch on the two teams. I think come the end of the Super Bowl, we'll see two teams actually it is a whole new project for them. And to be fair, if I was a head coach, unless there was someone like outstanding as a head coach, sort of offensive coach, defense coach, I wouldn't potentially mind not having them there, because you can just bring in your whole new system and you're not going to upset too many people by hiring and firing all the time. So, but with the Titans, I think I was a little bit shocked they obviously got as far as they did this season. But on the plus side, they're going to come in actually something to build on for next year. And like I say, Mariota, he does probably need the shackles sort of taken off him, because he's not a bad quarterback.
No, he's had the stabilizers on.
And last year, in 2016, they were the best team in the division at the end of the year, but Mariota was hurt, so they couldn't take advantage of that.
There was a lot of talk pre-season that they were going to be a good team,
and this year, or next season, 18, if Luck comes back healthy, if Watson comes back healthy,
it's a good division.
That's a tough division all of a sudden.
Yes, exactly. 18th coach of the New York Giants is Pat Sherman,
the fourth guy who the NFL insiders online said was definitely going to get the job. So at least they were right 1 out of 4.
Close.
Shermer is for them, I think, a pretty good hire because he could install a new offense. He can install an Eli-friendly offense. He can make it Eli-friendly.
Plenty of play action, which is what Eli likes. That's
it allows them, if they want to keep Steve Spagnuolo as defensive coordinator. And I don't really think there's much reason for them to fire him. I can't remember whether Shermer and Spags have history at Philadelphia, because it was an interesting thing last week that nobody really picked up on. But Shermer was the offensive coordinator for Minnesota, obviously, and Doug Peterson is the head coach and de facto offensive coordinator for the Eagles. They both came from Green Bay with Andy Reid, but their careers never meshed in Philadelphia.
Right.
You know, Shermer arrived just as Peterson left, or vice versa.
Right,
so they were never actually the same place at the same time. But they came from very similar backgrounds, and so he knows that division well. He knows what strengths and weaknesses for the Eagles are. I would not be surprised to see them draft a running back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If one's available high in the draft.
Saquon Barkley looks pretty much the nail on second.
And
or
then,
third
but
pick,
the big question mark hanging over is what are they going to do with quarterback? You know, will Shermer think Davis Webb is worth trying to develop? You know, can he get a year of Eli? A year to see what Davis Webb is
he's
like,
still got
and
a 2-year
then draft
deal,
a quarterback. You know?
He's still got 2 years. It will take him to 39. So it's I think something along those lines. Anyway,
by that time you'll have to be like pushing him in chair.
Yeah, exactly. But at least he's willing to play on, which is a good thing. Looking at the offensive coordinators, Mike McCoy is being talked of there. Ben McAdoo as well has obviously.
Well, McAdoo, I can't see him staying at the Giants. I mean,
he's gone, but I mean, there was talk that he was actually coming back as a coordinator.
I can't see any value in keeping him as a coordinator with the Giants. As a coordinator, I think he's probably going to get another shot, but as a head coach, it may take a long time. And I like the idea of McCoy to Arizona better than New York.
So I mean, it's possible that quarterback coach Kevin Stefanski, he's only 35. He's been in that system for since with. 2006 he was at Minnesota, so I think it's possible that he could come over.
I'm trying to think if there's other people Shermer's been associated with, like in St. Louis. Bevel's available.
Bevel's available. Got asked at the Seahawks as defensive coordinator. It's possible there if they do go a different route. So. But Jack Del Rio could possibly be in line for the Giants' defensive coordinator's role as well. Probably. That's
an interesting thought. I was kind of assuming they would keep Spags.
Well, he's a 4-3 guy. I mean, I just don't
Del
know
Rio is. I mean, it would make they wouldn't have a system problem.
Yeah.
Del Rio's very good in the sense of coming in and pushing players to get better, and they've got enough talent on defense. I think if Del Rio came in, the thing they'd be looking for is a linebacker or two, which is probably what they need anyway. But Del Rio is very good with linebackers in particular, which is where he played. That's a very interesting idea.
They need a new direction. The Giants. There's always this bit of excitement, maybe because of the city that they're in and sort of the aura that the Giants give, but they need something new in that city now, and someone like Jack Del Rio will probably do that. And you say, okay, it's a new system, but I think there's going to be a lot of changes in amongst the Giants. And to be fair, the defense. There was a couple of games I watched, and it was like actually that's probably not their issue at the moment. Where they obviously lacked. Obviously, they had the injuries, up front, which really did affect them. And that could, I'm not saying Ben McAdoo would have gone and done great things if everyone had stayed injury free.
They didn't. They didn't play up to their talent, though. That's for sure. But partly because the offense was leaving them on the field for long parts of the games. The one that really interests me is Todd Haley going to Cleveland as the offensive coordinator. There seems no possible fit between him and Hugh Jackson. The styles of offense, the way they play, doesn't make much sense to me. I've not thought of it that way. And Haley has been a head coach as well as a coordinator. So if I'm Hugh Jackson, Todd Haley's like a vulture, hanging behind me, and they're sending me a message. I can't see Hugh being the guy who brought.
To be fair, when you go 1-31 in 2 seasons, I mean, you don't really need a message, do you?
That's true.
It's writ large.
That's true. It was. We talked about that here. I think that it was a big surprise that he actually came back.
Yeah, that is a real. I was a bit surprised by that, but you make
partly because I don't see the long-term plan. We gave the Jags, or I gave the Jags.
Their long-term plan
4 years in a row,
and that's it.
They've got the right long-term plan. They just haven't executed right. But I don't see the long-term plan.
The long-term plan sort of happens in April at the draft, and that's it. And then they think, what do we do now?
They've got some great draft positions again this year. But it's like you just know they're not going to get it right. There's no confidence there. Yeah.
Right. Of course, we know who will be playing in Super Bowl 52 next Sunday. That'll be New England against Philadelphia. We're going to have a little look back at the championship games just after this break.
Hi, I'm J.R. Lemon. I play Devin Wade on Madden's Long Shot.
I'm Scott Porter, a.k.a. Colt Cruise, the cruise missile.
And make sure you subscribe to what?
SportsHeads. Click that subscribe button, y'all. Come on.
Bring it.
Redzone.Bet, the British home of American sports.
Hello, welcome back to the Sports Heads in association with Red Zone Sports. We're just now a week away from Super Bowl 52 in Minnesota, where the New England Patriots take on the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to have a look now at the championship games, just going to have a little reflection of last week's games. There was talk, we'll start with the Patriots against the Jaguars. The Patriots were flagged once for 10 yards, right, whereas the Jags were flagged 6 times for 98 yards. That, to me, is one of the main talking points of the game. It's as though the Jaguars, and the perception is the Jaguars were forced to play not just against New England. Is it a case of sour grapes, though?
I think there's a bit. I think there's a little bit of both of coaching, not rallying the players just to calm down a little bit. There was a few tackles that went in that were a little bit questionable. But I think the coaches, the players were a bit rattled up. The fact that it was obviously in New England as well obviously plays a part. But yes, sour grapes. But there are a couple of calls on the flip side for New England that you probably could have gone the other way. I think in another town, the referees. I'm sorry, but no matter how friendly and how much you know the players, you have to conduct yourself in a way that millions are watching you. You can't go and start high-fiving players and celebrating with players.
No one did that. There's one internet meme going around that I saw, which is the referee laughing with the players
There's a couple of
after the James White touchdown. Now the problem with that was he was laughing at the players while they were screaming at him to call a penalty because Myles Jack had tackled White and then head wrestled him down after he was in the end zone, and he was laughing at them, kind of saying, "Okay, guys, you want a penalty, you're not going to get it." So that makes no sense to me. And I thought the Jags were lucky not to be called more. You play a physical game, you have to take the chances. Some games they're not going to call you, some games they are. But the 98 yards is because you had 2 huge pass interference penalties. Now neither of them was a bad call, unless you're going to let A.J. Boye was whining. And I mean, there was a great play where it wasn't even a catchable ball to.
He's forced him out of bounds.
No, this is another play. Right. It was over the middle of the field, and Cooks was basically double covered, and Brady threw it anyway. And when you got the replay from the end zone, you saw that Boye was running, and he had his right hand
around the back,
around Cooks's left arm, and was pinning it to his side. But no one could see it because he was covered on the side. I mean, this goes on all the time. I hate the idea that it's like, let the 2 guys fight the way down the field, because the rules say that one guy's not supposed to have his hands on the other. If you want to go back to the pre-Bill Walsh 1978 rule, and you can just hit a guy all the way down the field, fine. I got no problem with that. But the way the rules are, they say, he's not gaining an advantage by putting his hand on him. You run down 30 yards with somebody who's got their hand on your arm and tell me that they don't get an advantage by doing that. It makes no sense. And I thought the fumble, the Jacksonville was lucky to get the fumble, because it looked to me, after watching it over and over again, that James White's knee was clearly down and the ball was clearly on his hip with his hand over it. Then as he went down. Now, and again, the NFL seems to have a problem with the idea of control as opposed to possession. Could he have spun the ball on his finger, gone like that, thrown it up, catch it, and do that?
I get that, but totally. But on the flip side, the referee's blown a whistle before the play's dead. Could have gone the other way.
Well, the play was dead when his knee hit. So in fact, there was no fumble. If you accept that there was a fumble, the whistle blew.
But the rules are very. They're not watertight. They're so open to interpretation at the moment. And we saw that. For me, I'd still go back to the Steelers touchdown because you've broken the plane.
Juju Smith-Schuster, you mean, in the play?
The ball's moving.
Was it? No, was it Juju? It was. God, the name's gone. It's gone from me.
Yeah, but it's the
might have been
the question is whether you're a receiver or a runner. And White and Lewis was clear a runner at that point because he'd run 5 yards with the ball. But anyway, the one that got me was everybody screaming about non-catchable ball on the sidelines. Now, if you're running down the sideline, and it was great, he had great position, defense. He had no need to grab him around the neck. But the ball was not thrown over the sideline. It was thrown into the field, which means Cooks wants to go like this to catch it. he can't go like this because
No,
someone's holding his head. How can that not be interference?
I totally get that. No, that's fair enough. You made a good case,
Thank
as
you.
always, for New England. I'm sure they'll be very happy with you.
Oh, if it were two other teams, I would do the same thing. I keep pointing out that, you know, it's coached by a lot of teams, everyone to some extent, because you're allowed to use it. It's not the rule, but it's the interpretation of the rule. But Pete Carroll, Seattle, Dan Quinn in Atlanta, you know, guys who have come out from that system, and in Jacksonville was up till last year was the same way. You're taught to use your hands. You know, get your hands in there, play. Now, supposedly when the ball comes out, you release, because you can't use your hands when the ball's in the air. But if you're not looking at the ball, you have no way of knowing that. So what you do is you play the receiver's arms. And when his arms go up, your hands go up to try to block the ball. It's not by any means foul free, even under the modern rules.
I'll just leave you with the thought that the previous least penalised team in the playoffs with one penalty,
Patriots.
New England.
I'm not
Baltimore,
surprised.
2011.
It's a well-coached team.
Exactly.
And they were
exactly the reason.
And they're coached that way, especially when you play against a physical team. It's one of the few advantages they can have, because they were beaten up. I mean, Jacksonville out-physicaled them for most of that game.
We shall make sure that goes into Lindy's, and you can write a piece about it next year.
Why not?
Tom Brady. Why not write a piece about Tom Brady? You remember him? 8th Super Bowl. I mean, it's phenomenal. But is this his last hurrah, chaps?
Yes. I think that you're seeing the New England unravel a little bit now. The coaching staff going. I don't know if Brady would hang around if all the coaches leave as well. And I think Belichick. This will be Belichick's last year as well.
That would be interesting, because that would kind of confirm the Seth Wickersham story. You know, and this would be like Belichick just saying goodbye to Robert Kraft, and now you can build the next team on your own. I kind of.
Are you starting to waver now because you think this was going to happen? But,
a little bit. Giselle came out and said she didn't want Tom to play anymore. You know,
she's always doing that. She's standing there with this rolling
I just
pin.
think if I'm Bill Belichick, I see another challenge, and you know, he's lost his coordinators before. He lost Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel in the same year, and they actually went for a season with no offensive coordinator, just a quarterbacks coach, and calling the plays. I think he and Brady both respond to challenges, and they've got. It's funny. I went through the Super Bowl like starting lineups, and if you check over who's got the better player, it's Philadelphia come out on top in terms of talent that's on the field, and Jacksonville did the week before.
But all
bar one plus the coaching. So I see the possibility, but I still don't really think. I don't know. Brady has been to 12 conference championship games in his 16 full season, not counting the one where he went out in the first game of the year.
That's partly
that's 75%.
That's partly
right?
the weakness in the AFC East. To be fair.
The best completion percentage for any quarterback in the Hall of Fame is Kurt Warner at 65.5.
Yeah, but
that
that's not over a certain period, is it?
Brady has a better chance of getting to the AFC Championship game than Kurt Warner does of completing a pass.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. It really is. I mean, talk about Danny Amendola as well. I mean, he's been asked to take a pay cut the last 3 seasons, but he just seems to keep doing it. Doesn't he?
Well, there's 2 reasons for that.
Do quarterbacks make good receivers? Is that what you're going to say?
He wasn't a quarterback. He was a receiver.
Do quarterback? We're saying do quarterbacks.
Oh, do the quarterbacks make the receivers? Sorry, I thought it was like a Julian Edelman thing. Yeah, I mean to an extent. I mean, and when you watch the passes Brady completed to Edelman in that game, each one was precisely on target, thrown to a place where only Edelman could get to the ball, even though he was most of the time pretty well covered, apart from the second touchdown. Low in one case, ahead in one case, and he's got the hands to be able to do that. And he's no 5'11", 190. He's about 5. I did a Super Bowl with him for the BBC, and he's about 5'9", I would guess, maybe 10.
Hope for us all.
But I think the complaints from A.J. Boye, one of them was Amendola had hit someone in the head. I think the play he's talking about was James White's touchdown run, where he blocks Colvin. But when you're blocking, you can go in with your head. So he literally, it's perfect form.
Yep.
He looked like a pulling guard coming out, and he just drove Colvin out of the play completely. So in that game, he had the key block, or a key block on a touchdown.
Yeah.
He caught 2 touchdown passes. He threw a 20-yard completion, which Dion Lewis fumbled or
How
not.
valuable is he to the
And he
Patriots?
made that 20-yard catch. He's more valuable to them than anyone else in the league, which is why nobody else in the league has ever offered him a big free agency contract. You know, he's not.
It's another fit, isn't it? It's
There's
just the right
31,
fit in the right
31
system.
teams who say we can't pay you like a number 1 or a number 2 receiver because you won't be that for us. But for New England, and they don't tend to overuse him during the season because he is, you know, he's fragile in the sense that he's really developed for a small guy and carrying a lot of muscle. So I just think it's a perfect fit of team and system. And coming into next year, if Mike, you know, if Malcolm Mitchell is back and they've got Kenny Britt, who hasn't actually played for them, but he's sitting on the roster. Dorsett, you know, he was on the field for 2 snaps and he made 1 huge play. Another perfectly thrown ball, by the way. You know, he'll probably go in on the depth chart as the 5th or 6th receiver, and if they go into the playoffs, he'll wind up being the key again.
Incredible. Let's have a little chat about Minnesota.
Oh, he had the 20-yard punt return too.
Enough of New England now.
Yeah,
Things are a little.
please.
We'll have plenty of them next week. That's
And
for sure.
guess what
So,
Danny Amendola's second
Go on.
team in the NFL was?
second team in the NFL. I know this, but I can't remember it. Go on.
The Eagles.
Do know it. Oh, of course it was. Yeah, I didn't know that. Being honest, Minnesota seemed to fire blanks in Philadelphia. We thought the historical trend would see them do that, and they seemed to do that. Will they be in the NFC Championship game next year?
Well, it's going to be a lot harder. That division's going to be a lot better.
With Aaron Rodgers back.
Yeah, Rodgers will be back.
Garoppolo at 49ers, I think, will obviously kick on.
You got
as
Matt
well.
Patricia taking over at
with the Lions,
Giants, the Lions
and Nagy with the Bears.
Yeah.
Defense stays the same, which is really good defense.
They got a good
Lions
running game.
offense supposedly will stay the same.
The only thing I would say though, that to be fair, last season, if they hadn't had the injuries, they would have probably kicked on again. Because they if they went, is it 5-0 sort of, they had a quick start. They seem to get these good starts. If they can do it again, it heaps a lot of pressure on them. Are they losing anything this year? Probably not a lot. I know obviously Pat Sherman's going, but that's someone they can replace. I think on the field they're probably not losing a lot. Can they get there? Yes, if the form is right. What I'm interested to see what they do at QB, because obviously
that's the key thing. We just
Keenum and Bradford being back. It's just what do they do? I mean,
You've got 3 good quarterbacks there now.
Oh yeah,
all
Bridgewater's back,
free
of
agents.
course.
Yeah.
So they have to make a decision quickly.
And
Incredible.
who do they go with?
My guess is Bridgewater's going to be the one who stays because he's the one who's going to have less interest from other teams. He's damaged.
I'm happy
goods,
just to
basically.
sit on the bench.
And they've got a 4th guy, Kyle Sloter, who's the only one who's under contract now, who was undrafted out of Colorado State, but a big, tall guy with a good arm. And Denver signed him, but then cut him late because they kept Chad Kelly as their next quarterback. And Minnesota signed him really quickly, so they must like him. So my guess is that Bradford will get an offer somewhere.
Yeah.
Keenum will probably get an offer somewhere, and Bridgewater won't.
Right.
So Bridgewater's probably the most likely to stay. They might make a move to keep Keenum. I think the one thing that the Eagles game, well, besides showing how good the Eagles actually are, that's still not a team that can come back from a big deficit. They can come back from a score down, but once they went down by 3 scores, and the Eagles, it was so brilliant. I mean, if you want to compare the 2 championship games, the last minute of each first half, the Eagles were up 21-7. They took, what was it, 37 seconds to get a field goal on the board.
Game over, isn't it?
The Jags had 55 seconds and 2 timeouts and took knees. And I was just sitting there going, huh? You're up by 4 over New England, and you have time to put more points on the board. You're saying to New England, we don't trust ourselves.
I mean, talking of coaching, from me, it was a case of, I thought Todd Walsh, Jags DC, actually produced a really good game plan. And I also thought Jim Schwartz did. Who had the better, whether it was the Eagles or whether it was the Jags, who had the better defensive coordinated game?
Well, see, the difference is the Jags had to, the Patriots adjusted, and the Jags had to readjust to that, and they didn't. They did by playing a lot of zone, which I think
they needed man. You're better off playing man,
which plays into New England's hands. Yeah, I think you're better off covering them in man, even if you get beat occasionally.
At least disguising it. Yeah.
And the thing I noticed was that in the second half, Brady was taking really deep drops. None of this 5-step stuff. It was all 7-step drops, and letting they needed time. Offensive line did a good job. Schwartz, you almost didn't need to coordinate after halftime.
Just pin their ears back and let them go.
Yeah, and that was playing in that. The Eagles are a tough team like that, and funnily enough, Chris Long made one big play, obviously forcing the interception, then recovered a fumble on the other. And of course, Chris Long has a chance now to be one of those few guys who's taken a Super Bowl ring with two different teams in 2 years, because he got one with he and LeGarrette Blount.
It's nice to see. He's had a good career, Chris Long.
And become a really admirable. He's donated virtually his whole salary this year to charities, to useful charities as well. I've got a lot of time for Chris Long.
I think Todd Walsh needed to. Not just the coaching, but this is where I come back to sort of a bit of man management again. As I say, when you were seeing the penalties obviously being given, Todd Walsh has got to. It just seemed like he didn't. For me, if you're on the side, I'd like to see the coach sort of losing his rag a little bit. Why are you giving those up? It's almost like he was kind of just accepting those penalties a little bit.
This goes back to the style of play. You want to play with swag. He wants to play with swagger the same way. It's partly they want the receivers thinking about what you're going to be doing, and so it's kind of hard. I mean, to sort of tell the guys you can't do that anymore. You could have a more quiet word, sort of like. Can I mention one other play going back? I mentioned Philip Dorsett and that one catch. That was the flea flicker, which is one of the best flea flickers I've ever seen, because most flea flickers you go straight into the line, but this went kind of sideways and then pitched back. At the point Brady gets the ball, Miles Jack is at the line of scrimmage, about to come in and join the tackle on those. He sees the ball go back, he turns around, he caught Philip Dorsett. And if he had one more step, that pass isn't completed. I've never seen anybody with it come. It was very amazing.
Very underrated.
And I just thought that to me was the play of the game. And it can't be, because it didn't. It didn't work. But to see a guy actually do that was the most impressive bit of football I saw all weekend.
Of course, London fans, fans of the UK, will have a big interest in the Super Bowl. We've got Jay Ajayi, grew up in Hackney, and
he was born in London. I've never been.
Did you not?
Never
been told that?
Jesus.
Some people may not know this. You know everything. You are the guru. We know this. The Doi Un of.
No, that's great. It's great to see.
Looking back, I mean, obviously he had a boom or bust sort of time with the Dolphins. Are the Dolphins fans in particular, are they right to feel a little bit aggrieved now that they're only getting a 4th round pick for him, looking back and looking where he's gone to?
I don't think so. I think it was obviously a lot of emphasis put on him because he's the UK lad, should we say, and everyone sort of gave him that. And the Miami Dolphins, they did back him, but as an individual, you need to sometimes put yourself in a sportsman's shoes and sort of say, all that talent that he does have, he needs to be successful. Now I think he'd done his time with the Dolphins, and he probably went further than he probably should have, and it was just no one was offering him anything there, or any sort of like a hand on his shoulder. So no, we're going to do this, and next year this is what we're going to do. I don't think he was offered that. So I think they should just be like, look, he done everything he could, and he moved on. It's not his fault that they traded for a 4th round pick.
That's true.
It's not his.
If Adam Gase was gone,
you had an issue with Adam Gase.
They would regret it. Yeah, but I think there was something there. He didn't fit what Gase wanted to do, or he couldn't do what Gase wanted him to do, wouldn't do. So probably better off gone. And a 4th was not just recompense, but I mean, they're going to get a 4th for Eric Rowe, because Rowe played fewer than 50% of the snaps this year. Because he got hurt. But that was another conspiracy theory. I thought people saying Belichick faked his injury so that he wouldn't reach 50 snaps. So instead of a 3rd round pick, the Eagles get a 4th. And I think it's time to say congratulations to the Eagles for both having a good draft, signing a lot of good but not high-priced free agents, very much like New England. I mean, Blunt and Long coming from New England. But the trade of Bradford before last season, all these things are coming back, to and having Blunt and Ajayi, and Clement was a great, undrafted free agent signing. They can run the ball at you in lots of different ways.
And of course, Fletcher Cox has got to be one of the most disruptive players in the league.
Oh yeah.
So, and coaching as well, Doug Pedersen. I mean, we look at it and sort of, he's almost in Coach of the Year sort of category for me, because he's had that stability after Chip Kelly. They didn't have that stability. Don't you think? I mean, I just think that the stability he's given, and the gravitas. Yeah,
and coming back when it's funny because guys who are expected to do well don't generally get much consideration for Coach of the Year. So Mike Zimmer won't get much.
It's like Sean McVay will probably.
McVay will probably get Coach of the Year, and deservedly, I think.
I'm impressed with how the Eagles dealt with Wentz going. I think if you look, at the time you had the Eagles and the Texans flying. You got Watson and Wentz. It was just trade-off of what they had done each week, and the scores that they were putting on the board were outrageous. But then the fact that Foles has come in, and I'm not taking anything away from Foles, but
they've sort of pared back the playbook a little bit.
Yeah, they've adjusted for him, and everyone's sort of going around, and it has worked. And that's why you can't, that has to come down really. I know not just the personnel, but obviously the coaching as well. And as a head coach, he's recognised what he needed to do, and they find themselves in a Super Bowl, even though losing.
They brought back Chip Kelly's playbook. Not that they went a lot from, but
it's more West Coast, isn't it?
But a lot of those run-pass option reads for Foles. And the interesting thing to me is that Howie Roseman's done a great job as GM for Philadelphia, like I said. But one of the things that will go unnoticed, sort of, they decided Wentz was their guy, he and Peterson, right? And then they said, why is he our guy? This is what he can do for us. Well, we don't need Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford can't do that for us. Chase Daniel, who they signed as a backup, can't do that for us. But Nick Foles can. Foles can throw that long ball, and on third down and whatever. Wentz spent the season on a 3rd and 7 completing 25, 30-yard passes, and Foles can do the same thing. And that was the key to their success against Minnesota.
Jacksonville, we haven't talked too much about them, but they're obviously sort of along with the Rams, I'd have thought would have been the surprise package of this year. A young, improving team. I mean, do you think they're going to make the playoffs again next year? Or is it still,
it's going to be tougher, we said already, in that division. And they've got a couple of free agency decisions to make, too, especially at wide receiver.
Marquise Lee as well.
Marquise Lee and Robinson both. And Robinson's coming off an injury, so there's a good chance they could give him a sort of show-me contract.
And they've also got Patrick Amema and Paul Posluszny as well, free agents.
Paz will be an interesting. Omami's been valuable to them because he can fill in at multiple positions. Paz is an interesting one because how much does he have left? And they've got that. They've got Jack and they've got Telvin Smith. So he's off.
He's
the
a
field.
Good rotational player now.
Yeah, he's off the field a lot in past situations, and that was one of the things that surprised me about New England. Although once Gronk went down, they didn't have much choice. But I had said I think that. I expected New England to go with 2 tight end sets or running back tight end sets and just 2 wide receivers to keep Jacksonville in base defense, not bring Beasley, not Beasley.
Nicole Beasley. Yeah, he's on.
No, the guy who looks just like Beasley.
I'm trying to think who you mean.
Fowler, Dante Fowler.
Oh right, yeah.
They bring Fowler in, and they become more, much more dangerous rushing. And the 2 linebackers cover so much space. They're fine. But the only time they really tried to do that was when they went hurry up on one series, and they ran the ball 3 times for probably 8 yards total, and they never did it again. And when Gronk was down, they then went with the wides the whole time, spread it out, and they more or less didn't worry about challenging Boyer and Ramsey. They threw at them. But when they weren't throwing at them, Brady was generally looking for the mismatch on the linebacker. Whoever had the linebacker was going to get the ball. It worked pretty well.
I think the Jags need to probably really know what they're going to do at QB as well.
It's always the question.
Bortles, I'm not taking anything away from him, but if you carry on with him, there is no point actually bringing in any sort of top quality wide receivers. You're probably actually better off giving the contracts to people like Marcus Lee, who's quite happy just to, sit in there and get a few.
He's underrated, aren't he? He's a much better player than people give him credit for.
He's always.
I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying it's.
I think he'll thrive with a better quarterback.
But get a different QB, because all that happens, I think, on the offensive side is if you take Fournette out of the Jags, it becomes a little bit predictable, and you can kind of.
Well, the thing was they had a couple of good games without Fournette because they weren't predictable, because Hackett started changing the play calling, and again against the Patriots, first half, come out play action on first down, successful. The passes to the outside, which the Patriots adjusted to stop in the second half. But in the second half, it was shotgun, Fournette, first down, 1 yard. Then get downfield deep, nothing. Third and long, and that's the situation the Patriots want to put you in, is third and long. Bortles is always going to be a guy who every time he makes a mistake, everyone's going to slap their floors and say, we can do better than that. Now the reality is, would they be that much better with, say, Kirk Cousins at quarterback? I don't think so.
Or a Ryan Tannehill.
I don't know.
I don't think they're a lot better than.
But I think what they should do is probably draft a quarterback to develop, and have one there rather than move in for a free agent.
Just briefly, I think Doug Marrone's done a tremendous job as coach of the Jaguars this year, and obviously the rise has been pretty much down to the coaching. What about Doug Marrone as potentially a Coach of the Year candidate?
I don't see it, to be honest, because you can point to games where bad decision making has sort of cost them, like the conference championship. Plus, they had a pretty good, solid thing, and Doug's done a great job in terms of putting in that run game, making them play a hard-nosed kind of football, getting that defense to play the way they were designed to play, but you also look at Tom Coughlin's influence and stuff like that. I mean, he would be the division's Coach of the Year easily, and in the AFC, there aren't too many other contenders. Belichick is probably the other major contender in the AFC for Coach of the Year.
I think Sean McVay, for me, I know he's obviously the Rams came out a little bit earlier. I just liked how he came out, and no one expected anything from the Rams still. And there was a lot of question marks still on the young coaches that were coming in, and just what he did, especially in that division as well. I think for the Rams, I just think that. Okay, he might not get it this year, I think, but he is another coach to maybe watch next year. And see if the Rams can actually.
I think
he gets it. I think McVay gets it. I wonder if Wade Phillips will get, like assistant coach of the year, which he probably deserves. But I mean, that was another good move by McVay. I don't know if it was his idea, but it was certainly his decision. Would have to sign off on it, and to bring Wade in,
bringing the two receivers in from Buffalo, Woods as well, bringing him home to California.
Wade had something to prove. Because I think Denver were silly to let go of him.
I don't think he had anything to prove. I think his CV speaks for itself.
That's
I think,
true too.
It's probably more look at what I've just done.
Exactly. Chaps, brilliant. Well, just we don't know. We'll sort of be having a Super Bowl show next week, and there was a little bit of a line move overnight, apparently in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, someone at MGM Grand apparently put more than a few grand, a couple of million apparently on the Eagles, which is not. I mean, the Eagles were at 5.5, and right away I just said, didn't they watch the games on the weekend? But the idea is to get money coming in on the Eagles, and when you consider that Vegas had them as underdogs at home in 2 consecutive games, it's almost like, wow, it could be higher. But I think it's a good bet. Now, it went down a point there, although it's still 5.5 in other places. But that is a lot of money, and looking ahead, and I haven't made my final decision at this point, but looking ahead, it's going to be a close game. I can't see it being like the Minnesota game, because you could see an couple of early touchdowns in the Eagles defense coming on and bothering Brady a lot, but you just get the feeling that it's going to be another one of those 3-point New England Super Bowls. Right. And so 5.5 looks good in the 3-point.
Right. Let's see what referees turn up, shall we?
Interesting thought. I think we'll leave that controversial, interesting thought just there. We're going to get your thoughts obviously next week on the Super Bowl, Sam. And Mike, Enjoy your trip to Minnesota. We hope to have you back next week, but we're not sure on
We'll
travel
see how
arrangements.
we'll see how
we'll see how we get on. But appreciate your company as always, Mike Carlson from the BBC. We'll obviously be watching glued to our sets on Super Bowl.
Hey, no commercials, just us.
No commercials except the Lindy's, who I'll be holding up as always. Noticed that last time. Sam Morgan from The Verge magazine. Great insight as always. Thanks ever so much, chaps. Don't forget, you can get your bets on at Redzone Sports. There are a myriad of bets for the Super Bowl, so take a look, have a look, see what's there, and I'm sure you'll find some props to have a look at. I'm Simon Millen from Lindy's Sports. You've been watching the Sports Heads in association with Redzone Sports. We'll see you again next week for the Super Bowl show. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Here at Redzone, we have a soft spot for American sports, especially NFL. It's as American as cheerleading. Unfortunately, when it comes to betting on gridiron, there is very little choice between bookmakers. That's because almost all bookmakers get their odds from Las Vegas. And we all know what happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas, especially their nasty odds. So we're stripping back to basics, creating our own odds, giving you lucky punters the very best of British bookmaking for American sports. Would you like to see some more? RedzoneSports.Bet, the British home of American sports.